Hi everyone, it's great to see you. Today I'm going to be talking about using perennials in your planters. So this is the first year that I have lined up some planters at the back of the shade garden, and it just happened, so I moved them from all over the yard. It happened that this particular planter had some things that I had just quickly stuck in it at the end of last year. Well, I say that during the summer of last year. One was this hosta. I dug up one hosta leaf when I moved something and didn't really have a place for it, so I threw it in this pot. And then I had some of the creeping Jenny left over, put it in the pot, and I think I had an impatient or a begonia in here. And it stayed out through the winter. Now, this spring, I've added some pansies, but look at how beautiful and how good this looks. And I really didn't have to do anything to it. So compared to my sad empty pots that I now need to pot up completely, how lovely to step out here and just feel like I really have a finished planter right away. It got me thinking, am I really utilizing my planters the best way that I can when I can have something so beautiful just returned to me in the springtime? So I thought I would share with you a little bit about what I have learned about putting perennials in planters. My first piece of advice is that you are not going to put something that is your absolute favorite in a pot and leave it out through the entire winter. When you're putting something in a planter and you're leaving the planter in your yard, there's a few things to consider. One is it's going to have all this cold air. Well, I'm in zone 6B, so we get cold air. If you don't, you're very lucky. It's going to have this cold air freezing what's in here a lot more quickly than what goes in the ground. So anything that's going to survive in here really needs to be probably a couple zones hardier than what you can have stay alive in the ground. Hostas are generally pretty hardy. So that's one thing to consider. The other thing to consider is when you leave your pots outside, you really have to be careful of how much water they're getting in the winter. This particular one, when I went out in the winter, had maybe 3 inches of water sitting in the top. It had stopped up the bottom and it wasn't draining. And if I hadn't noticed that, it would have all rotted. We see this a lot when you put a hosta in a planter like this. So I tipped it on its side. Some people tip their planters on their side through the whole winter. That's one approach you can take, or you can be like me and just be really aware of when you need to make sure that it's empty. Likewise, if you have a dry winter, you might need to give it a little water throughout the winter. They're hibernating, all of these plants, so you don't need to give them a lot of water. I do maybe a cup a month. So that's a couple things to consider. So these are 2 more planters in which I have perennials. This one overwintered outside. This one I put in my unheated shed. Let me tell you how I made that decision. So in here I have a beautiful stained glass hosta. I really do like this hosta, but I thought, okay, it's worth leaving it outside. Let's see how it does. When I got to it in the spring, I noticed that all the roots of the hosta were exposed. So I quickly dumped in some worm castings, covered it in, and thought, ooh, that could really do in that hosta. And sometimes you find that that happens in the winter, that some of that soil is eroded away, it exposes the roots, and maybe the plant dies because it was exposed to more cold. Fortunately, this hosta came back. But hostas emerge late, so I stuck in some pansies, some violas here, and it came back. It did fine. I did not water. I did not turn this on its side. This particular planter made it. Now this planter, I decided to bring into my shed, which is unheated, and I do that for a lot of things I'm a little worried about. I have in here the Proven Winners Dressed Up Ball Gown Heuchera. And I'll show you some other planters where I left this outside and it did absolutely fine. However, it also did absolutely fine in my unheated shed. The reason I put this planter though in the unheated shed is I have lovable hydrangea here. So I got this as a small new hydrangea last year. I know it doesn't have a really great root base here. Often you want to protect your hydrangeas more the first couple years. And I do not leave any hydrangeas that are not planted in the ground out in a planter. So really it was to protect my new hydrangea that this one got carried into the shed. Because it's in the shed, obviously it's not getting any water. So I measured out 1 cup of water for this planter once a month. I brought it in beginning of December and I bring them out May 1st. So they're really in the shed quite a long time, but boy, really came back looking great. So another planter that I'm really excited, I haven't done anything here. I can stick in some impatiens, some petunias, give it a little color, and it is all set for me. Okay, let's talk about this size planter. This is my 22-inch planter here. I have a bunch of these. I love these planters. They're that lightweight resin. Even being lightweight though, I am not going to move 12 of these into my shed. It is just too much for me. So you're going to see, or you have seen me do a lot of videos on the bag in the pot method, which is great for your larger planters or planters that you have a combination of items in where some need to be protected more than others. On my rim here, I have 3 of the Proven Winners Dressed Up Ball Gown Heuchera. This is my 3rd year with them. I have overwintered them outside every year. Love them. Look at how amazing they look. They get bigger every year. They're a semi-evergreen. So through the winter, actually my rabbits come up and they nibble them. You see a lot of stems that don't have any leaves there, but it sends out new growth in the spring. Perfect. In the center, I have a hydrangea, and I just told you, never leave hydrangeas out. So what I have here is a grow bag, and I put a nursery pot in the center here, and then I just lift my grow bag out of whatever is in here that's a perennial, but it's special and I need to give it that protection in my shed. This goes in my shed. I did nothing to the heuchera through the winter, but I did give that 1 cup of water to my perennial hydrangeas that were in the grow bag that were in the shed because they weren't getting any rain. Then all I have to do come May is lift this in and we are all set. And how wonderful. Now I have made sure, because I protected it in the shed, that this hydrangea is going to bloom. We know that a lot of hydrangeas, they get some bud kill because of cold weather, especially your macrophyllus like this one. This is a wee bit giddy, one of my favorites. And this just gives it that added protection in case you had a really tough winter. Let me show you some more. So here's another example of my big 22-inch pot here. This time I have a rose that's in my grow bag here. Not all of my roses come into the shed, but those that I have in grow bags, most of those do. So either my roses are in the ground, I do have one in a large pot, but it's hardy down to zone 4. So I feel like that's okay. So I can just drop the rose in here. Look at how wonderful it looks. It has great buds. Remember, roses are heavy feeders, so I did already feed this with the rose tone. And I have made sure that I've given it that cup of water in my shed. Look at underneath here though. Now I didn't plan on this. This is Creeping Jenny. I plant Creeping Jenny frequently as a trailer, and Creeping Jenny is hardy down to zone 7. Technically, we're now zone 7A, but you know, this isn't a planter, so I didn't expect this to overwinter. And yet, look at how good it looks. So sometimes you can luck out with your planters. I don't think I would count on my Creeping Jenny coming back after a really hard winter, but this was nice and sheltered. I moved it closer to the house or the fence, wherever the nearest place is that gives these pots some extra shelter, and it came back. These are 2 Creeping Jenny plants that I would have gone and repurchased this year, and now they're here and looking beautiful. One thing I didn't know about Creeping Jenny is if you do want to overwinter it, it's going to die off completely, and you clip it right down. The only part that's staying alive is the roots. So just clip it right down, get rid of the old foliage, and if it makes it through, it will send out these beautiful new tendrils here. Okay, I was thrilled with this particular planter. We have Creeping Jenny coming back on both sides. This, I believe, is the proven winner's Creeping Jenny. Notice the leaves are a little bit larger. I really like that. So now I'm thinking, ooh, it's coming back every year, or at least maybe I'll get 2-3 years out of it. That's pretty good. I think I might go for this kind that I tend to like a little bit better. Once again, in the center, I dropped in, here's my grow bag handles. I can just tuck those down. Another hydrangea that overwintered in the shed. I have some of my pansies here. The pansies are starting to look leggy, so pretty soon I will pull those out and put in my summer flowers for that. So here's a collection of 3 pots here. Once again, my bag in the pot Still have my violas around because they still look so pretty. And I have dropped in another wee bit giddy here, hydrangea that was in the shed separately. This pot went in the shed separately once again because I have a special hydrangea. It happens to be the purple type that lives in my yard that I know a lot of the blossoms get killed really easily in the winter. So I wanted to bring that in. I also have a stained glass hosta here. So that just happened to come in with it too. Now I can add annuals right in, but I have the structure, the majority of all these green leafy things looking really good. One little annual here and we're all set. Similarly, in this planter here, I had this is a florist, a gift hydrangea, so I know it's not hardy. I brought that in and I've already added in annuals here to spruce it up, but that was overwintered in the shed too. So I come out though and I have my thrillers, these beautiful hydrangeas that are gonna bloom gorgeously. I don't need to invest in those again, and I can switch up some of those colorful annuals around it. Some of my planters weren't planned out as well as others, and you'll see that I have some heuchera that came back here and there, maybe one creeping jenny and one plant, but having both the bag and the pot option, and then having a few of those perennials, hostas, heuchera, come back, that is just wonderful for me. And I'm keeping in mind that this might not be long term. My mom has done this for many years, and she says she finds her hostas usually make it about 4 years if they're just left unattended in a pot outside. Now, whether that's just because we happen to have a hard winter about every 4 years, or something happens water-wise, you know, hostas can live years and years and years in the ground. But for me, I'm gonna go out and buy something to put in these planters anyway. 4 years is a pretty good length of time compared to just 1 year. The other perennial that I'm having a lot of luck with in pots is the use of ferns. So I have 2 ostrich ferns that live in these pots year round. I do not worry about them at all. I do not bring them in, and look at how gorgeous they are. So these were overwintered outside. I don't do anything, and here they are once again. This is year 3 for both of these, and they're doing great. Now maybe year 4 is going to do them in, but boy, I feel so lucky to have had them for these 3 years. Here I am with some of the Japanese maples that are in planters, and I am new at Japanese maples. I honestly don't know which ones are a little more tender than others, so either they went in the ground, or if they were in a pot, they went in the shed. And I made sure, especially with Japanese maples, you really need to make sure you watch the water on them. They got the same cup of water that everything else in the shed did, and they came back gorgeously. So now I can go and put these around the yard wherever I would like. And it really gave me a peace of mind that, okay, these Japanese maples, they're going to be safe. And we see that with Japanese maples, a lot of times they send their really delicate leaves out, and then there's another frost. And it doesn't kill your plant, but it does have all the leaves shrivel up and look all, you know, not so good, frostbitten. This made sure that if I had a cold night, I could move them back to the shed, no problem. I have no signs of these leaves having gotten frostbit at all. Behind me, I have some pansies and another hydrangea, of course, in my bag in the pot. And boy, they're just making me happy. Probably next week, I'll be switching my pansies out for something else, but my beautiful hydrangea is going to be here all set to go again this year. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.